Really should have started this video earlier, but this is my project. I'm going to be restoring this stencil kit, which to me looks like it came out of the Hoshino factory, so modern day Tama. And from what I can tell, this looks like very late Star, right? So right before they officially came out as Tama drums, which Tama just means star in Japanese, right? But really excellent condition. So Tama started in 1974, as we know them today. So these are, no newer than 1973. Slinger, very much a Slingerland copy kit. 22-inch bass drum, 8-lug bass drum, metal hoops, which Pearl did also have metal hoops for a short time in the late 60s, but these very much look Hoshino, metal hoops with the black diamond pearl inlay on them. Tom's 1313. That's why it tells me it's a Slingerland copy, right? Because Slingerland did a lot of that 1313. I did have a 63 Slingerland kit that was 12, 12, 16. So I've taken the hoops and the heads off. All the toms. Here's the floor tom that I have completely stripped down now to the shell. No badge. This is the only drum that has any noticeable damage, right? Just a little bit of warp right there in the wrap, which I should be able to get back down. Slight tear in it too, but I'll be able to get that down. Matching snare, 5x14. Everything functions. The insides of the shells are near immaculate. Like, the snare actually had the original snare side head and the original snares on it. All right, there's a Slingerland style throw off and butt. So this will actually clean up really nice and really easy. You can see some of the tension rods are all the same length. Snare, toms, floor tom, same length. Lugs are all the same. You see the spring is fantastic condition. Floor tom legs, original feet on them. It's crazy. Didn't have the cymbal arm and missing one spur. So this is the disassembled snare shell. And you can see the wrap is actually in pretty incredible condition. So there's what was hidden underneath the lug. Right where my thumb is, right between those two holes. And I'll tell you what, you really don't see fading in this wrap, which is incredible, for a drum that is, I'm going to put it at 55 or 57 years old. If you look at the interior of the shell, it is in pretty incredible condition. Right? There's a little bit of glue mark there from gluing in the re-rings. But overall, dang, pretty impressed. So what I'm going to do, regardless, I got some light duty polishing compound, not rubbing compound, light duty polishing compound, and a couple microfiber cloths. I won't bore you with it, but I'm just going to rub down the shell and just get any of the surface grime out of. So shell is polished. Went over it a couple times. That's all the grime that came off of it. So not a whole lot. Really just household dust is really all that came off of it. So that's a win. right? And well, you have to look really hard to see any evidence of discoloration. I really don't see it. Because right there is where a transition is, and it's not there. So what I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to wax it, right? So I'm going to go with this pre-wax prep and then ceramic wax. Got a couple applicators, got some more microfiber cloths, all right, to wipe it down after the pre-wax and then after the wax, and see what it looks like after that. All right. This is the snare drum, nearly complete. So obviously I just polished everything, right? So first thing I do is I take 4/0 steel wool. Well, actually, first thing I do is I wash it, right? Soap and water's your best friend. Then I let it dry. 4/0 steel wool over all the chrome. And then after that, wipe it down. And then I use Mother's mag and aluminum polish, and I hand polish all the chrome. All right, so takes a while, but this is where I get. The other thing I did with the inside of the shell is I just wiped the thin coat of this Tama oil finish on all the exposed wood of the shell, just to, kind of moisturize the wood, because this wood is good 50 years old. And then once everything, and clean all the screws and everything, tension rods all cleaned. Tension rods, I actually just take some of that mag polish, put on a cloth, and just take a bit driver on a drill and just drill it through. And then wipe them down, make sure they're all clean. Here's what I'm doing. On the tip of each tension rod, I'm just putting a small dab of white lithium grease. And usually what I got to do is, because it's always too much, is I'll just take another one. All right. And then because I put white lithium grease on it, some people use a little brush and put it on after it's through the hoop. I don't. I just try to have a steady hand, right, to get the white lithium through. But you just need a little bit, because as you go to tension head, it's going to catch all the threads all the way through. All right. I'll be back after I get the tension rods in here and get it relatively tuned up. So here's the snare drum complete. All right, so this is a 5x14 star. That's the butt side. This is the throw off side. Does have an internal dampener. You can kind of see it through, right? I have it barely touching the head. Okay. So you see there's some pitting that you're just not getting out of the chrome, right? I put this drum right at 1970. There probably was a star badge around that grommet at one point in time, because there was a little bit of glue residue around it. The snares are kind of buzzing. All right, but it's long gone. The batter side hoop is a little worse for wear than the snare side. and the throw off was a little bit nastier than the butt side, which tells me obviously somebody was sweating all over this, right, for a long time. Tension rod's cleaned up pretty good. Again, we're 55 years, right? It's 51 years ago is when Star became Tama, right? All right, so I said I put this in 1970, so sorry, 55 years. You can see the internal dampener. So on snare side, I went with an Aquarian Classic Clear snare side and 16 strand Pure Sound snares. And here on the batter side, an Aquarian Focus X coated with a dot. All right. So quick tune up on this thing. All right. And camera audio. Back this internal dampener off. There. Just barely touching. If I really want to crank the dampener down. I do have one drum dot on it, right around the circle on the Aquarian logo. It's funny because the drum dot fits perfectly over that. Back that back off. I guess it's just barely touched. Oh, I'm sucking today. So sounds like a snare drum. So that's snare's done. Not touching it anymore. Lots of buffing, polishing, shell, hardware. Everything's put back together. The only thing non-original on it is I put nylon washers on the tension rods. Obviously, I have the originals. I'm just going to put those in a plastic baggie. Write Star on the baggie so I know where they go. All right, but other than that, cool snare. Went together pretty easily. All things considered. For its age. Came to me actually really, really restorable condition. All right. There's inside. Flip it over, grab the camera, and you can see just that tongue oil just brings out a little bit of the green in the wood. All right, this is Luan or Philippine mahogany. Some people argue if it's even a mahogany. Re-rings, snare bed's cut in it. Not a perfect snare bed. This is pre-Tama, right? We're probably going to adjust these snares a little bit because with this adjustable strainer, it's a little goofy. But I want to get them centered a little bit better. But other than that, you can see how clean the interior hardware is. Thankfully this was a drum that was never beat up, never stored in a garage or anything crazy like that, or else these shells would be delaminating. There would be rust on the hardware inside the drum, which it doesn't have. So pretty happy. Okay, so I'm working on the bass drum now, and I'm still polishing the wrap. All right, so the first time I polish it, I think I mentioned this before, I go with this light duty polishing compound, and I do it all by hand. Right, so first time through is here. Second time through is with this. Okay, so I use the light duty polishing compound with a microfiber cloth, and then I go through this pre-wax prep with just a round microfiber applicator pad. Okay, so I just put a streak of it on here, about this much, and that's for each section in between the lugs. All right. So I initially put it in a circular. All right, working in that area, I do overlap it a little bit. All right, and then I just go back and forth and kind of hold the drum with my legs. All right, because it's a bass drum, I can do that. Okay. And this gets any minor surface scratches out. Right? Like I said, this drum kit is actually in pretty incredible condition for its age. Obviously, there's no yellowing or anything to show. Then I take this clean microfiber cloth and I just rub that section between lugs. All right, get any residue off. Okay. Okay, and then this is the section I just completed. Here's the lug holes, and then there's this next section I'm going to do. Okay. See, it's a very minor difference. It clears it up. All right, so you can see here, this is done, this is not. Okay, so there is, with my naked eye, I can see the difference. With the camera, we'll see when I put the video together if you can actually tell the difference. But I can tell the difference between what I've prepped and what I've yet to do with the naked eye. So I'll keep doing this on the shell. I'll come back as I start applying the wax coat, and I'm using a ceramic wax on these drums from McGuire's, right? So it's automotive, works great on automotive plastics. There's a hair on there. So really works great for these old wraps, right? Because you don't necessarily know what these are made out of, and I've seen guys work on these wraps with chemicals and it starts melting them or it really messes them up, right? So that's why I do everything by hand. I use high-end products, minimally abrasive, right? Not a whole lot of chemical compound in them, right? Mostly that really fine abrasive. And products I trust that I use on vehicles and motorcycles to polish them, right? And so if I trust it on my Harley Davidson, I'm gonna trust it on my drums. Okay. All the polishing is complete. Get rid of wax. But real quick, I want to show that on this shell there was a piece of Scotch tape that was on there. I don't know, probably held a set list or something 30 years ago. But it was old piece of Scotch tape, so it didn't want to peel off right with my fingers. But these right here, these can save your butt on a vintage drum. When you got like a sticker or something, just a little plastic razor blade, and I just took like 20 minutes, and right, this was like an 1.5 inch long piece of Scotch tape. It took about 20 minutes just to work it all off. All right, and then use this on the glue residue that was on there. And then eventually just used my thumb and worked it on the glue until I was able to ball it up and pick it all off. So really, really tedious to get that little piece of Scotch tape off. But if you have that, like on any drum you're working on, plastic razor blades available at most hardware stores. I'm sure you can get it online, Amazon or wherever as well. But just took my time and really patient, and didn't use a chemical to try to get that off, right? Because the chemical can damage these older wraps, right? And then through the polishing process, got any remaining residue from that Scotch tape off, right? So just be very, very deliberate in that. All right, now I'm going into the waxing. I'm using this Meguiar's hybrid ceramic wax. I have a separate microfiber round here, and a clean microfiber towel to wipe off. Once I've. All right, so same process. I'm just doing this shell like 3 times, right? And this shell's was not bad, right? So it was pretty easy process overall. All right, I didn't really have to use a whole lot of the old elbow grease in it. All right, but just working that ceramic wax in. All right, into the wrap. All right, and then it'll leave a fine haze on there. Just take your clean microfiber cloth, and you're just going to wipe off that haze. If you do get any wax in the holes, right, top mount or lug holes or whatever, you can just use a Q-tip and just dip it in that hole. But once you put the wax on, you just feel how smooth and glass-like the shell becomes. The wrap becomes very glass-like, minus where it's stuck up from where the holes were drilled through it and into the shell. But right here, it's absolutely just like a nice, clean piece of glass. So really nice. Just take your time. Like I said, it's all tedious. So that's waxed. This section's waxed now. This section is not. So waxed, not waxed. Not as obvious probably to the camera as it is to the naked eye, but it shines and protects the drum, for many more years to come, right? These drums are already over 50, probably 55 years old. There's no reason they can't last another 50 years. So take your time with it. Be deliberate in cleaning, polishing the wrap, waxing the wrap. So I'm going to finish up waxing it. Then I'll come back because I'm going to apply tung oil to the interior of the shell. And then set it up to dry, and then I'm going to start working on the metal hoops, because the old Stars had metal hoops. Those should clean up really nice. There's no rattling in them. And then the rest of the hardware, get this thing put back together. All right, so exterior shell, completely polished and waxed. One thing I failed to mention earlier is I did have like one little corner of the wrap that was coming up. So I just used this indoor-outdoor carpet tape This happens to be Duck brand, but it's a double-sided tape. And I just cut a tiny little piece, just the size that I needed. Placed it under the wrap, peeled off the top, exposing the second side, and then just pressed it down, and then it holds pretty well immediately. All right. But what I'm going to do now on the interior, showed this on the snare, I believe, right? Some tongue oil finish. This is Minwax brand. Brand shouldn't matter, all right? But I just have an applicator. I'm just going to go over the interior of the shell with this. And what this I'm intending to do here is just preserve this wood, right? This wood's older than I am, and if it's treated well, it'll last after I'm gone, right? So I'm just going to try to make it last until after I'm gone from this planet, and these drums can live on. So, and it does change the color slightly, but I don't really care. Because it's really, for me, it's about preserving. All right. You also notice on these, it has your rear rings that are cut, bearing edge cut. There's also another ring around the middle. Probably because the wood type, they needed that extra structural integrity. But I'm making sure I get this oil in that joint as well. Right, and then I'll make sure I get the rings, the bearing edges oiled. Right, so all the exposed wood is going to be preserved as well for as long as possible. Right? Once this is complete, I'll set the shell aside. I'll let it all dry. Keep it safe, from getting kicked or knocked into or whatever. Then I'm just going to move on to hardware, and there's nothing exciting about polishing hardware. Just going to pop up my workbench here real quick, kind of see where I'm at. So this is bass drum. These are the lug screws and washers. Those are cleaned up. They're drying right now. All right. Next thing I'm going to go to are the claws. And the first thing that happens with any hardware, especially like the lug casings, the claws, I did say I am going to put these tension rods on the bass drum. So I have some key heads. I'll clean these up and put them to the side in a baggie, just so I have all the originals, but it's 2026, people. We're going here. Because it's going to be a usable kit. All right. But the first step is dish soap and hot water. All right. So you see, this is what a 55-year-old lug looks like. And 80% of the crap will come off with soap and water. All right. I do take hardware like this, screws, washers, wings. I just put them in a plastic cup, cover in this CLR brand. And yes, the screws, it does darken them, all right, because they'll originally look like this, all right, and it does turn them black, which I think is kind of cool, and I don't have an issue with, but some of you might, So if you want to polish every screw head by hand or with a little Dremel or something, like, go ahead. That's all you, bro. I'm going to do it with chemicals and acknowledge that I do get a reaction, but it's a reaction I like. Makes them black, or this dark, like gunmetal kind of gray. Cleans all the corrosion off of them. Not all, there's a little bit still on there, but yeah. It takes a 2-month restore job and turns it into 1 month, right, by doing that. But I'll come back. I already have the bass drum lug casings upstairs. I've already hand washed those with, like I said, dish soap and hot water. I'm going to do these bass drum claws next. Then we'll see some results because I'm working on the bass drum. Then I'll go to the 13-inch toms. Floor tom is going to be last because it does have some work I need to do on the wrap. So real quick, this is after hot water, dish soap. That's it. Hot water and dish soap. So there's the claws, spurs. This is actually a cymbal mount. And look at the lugs, all right? And I'll put a nasty tom lug right there next to comparison, right? Like I said, hot water, dish soap will get you 80% of the way there. Next step in this process, I'll just do one of them here real quick. Okay. All right, so I'll take this bad boy, all right, and I'll take this 4/0 steel wool, right? Comes in big bags like this. 4/0. It's not going to scratch, but this is my next step in the process. So I go through it with 4/0 steel wool. Now you notice some of these lugs do have the chrome flaking on them, right? So if the chrome's flaking, not much I'm going to do about it. All right. And this one does have a little pitting, so I'm not going to get super successful with the steel wool. All right, but you can see I really knocked it down a lot just with the steel wool. And the 4/0 steel wool, you see it doesn't scratch it. Okay, it really just gets that oxidation off. Okay. You kind of, if you got little crevices in there, you just, use your fingertip, use a fingernail, kind of work into that. Okay, and there is a step after this. I do use that mother's polish. Okay, so here I'll show the 3 levels. So untouched, soap and water, and then 4/0 steel. Okay. So you see those high spots of oxidation, they're gone when you get to here with the 4/0. All right, so whatever, minute per lug at each station, right? Soap and water, the 4/0 steel, and then about a minute with the metal polish. I use Mother's, and it'll really, it won't get all that out, right? That's 50 plus years of oxidation, but it'll do significant work on it and make it presentable. So there's where we are. Jeez. All right, let me show you the most exciting thing in drum restoration. Yep, that's right. It's sitting here for a couple hours. Polishing chrome. Excited yet? riveting. You can use your fingernail to get in those, all those little grooves. Pretty awesome, huh? Yep. About a minute and a half per. And like every 2 or 3 out. Wipe them off. That way I make sure it doesn't dry and crust on there. I don't want crusty lugs. Alright. That's what you end up with. Don't worry, I still got to do these. That's all crusty. Alright, so 12 lugs on each 13-inch tom, 16 for the floor tom. And by the time I get to this stage, I've already washed them in soap and water, 4/0 steel wool, and then this Mother's Mag and aluminum polish. Alright. Riveting. On to the next. Okay, so getting here towards the end of the video, I got to fix those bass drum spurs. I bought them online from Drum Factory Direct. Obviously, they're not exact fits. I'm going to have to bend the steel. I'll make them work. This Gibraltar suspension mount is kind of garbage. I thought it would work. Not a big fan. That's okay. Other than that, what I got on here, currently on the bass drum, Aquarian regulator front with a kick port. That's what I had on the shelf. Power Stroke 3 from Remo on the batter side. That'll go to a Super Kick 2, which is my go-to. Toms 13 and 16. Aquarian Response 2 on top, coated. Aquarian Classic Clear on the bottom side. Focus X coated with a dot on the snare, and a Classic Clear snare side on the bottom. So let me put this camera over here. See if I got these drums in frame. I don't really care about me. Obviously camera mic, so camera mic's going to be what a camera mic is. Biggest thing I learned, so this is not the original 13-inch hoop on here. The original hoops are no longer round. Not a surprise. Luckily I had a 13, and the 13 was really bad. The 16's out of round too. So like tuning the toms, not really a thing right now. I got them close, good enough for this right here, but I'm going to put new hoops on them, just because the original Hoshino Star, like 1.6 millimeter hoops, no longer round, not a surprise, super thin hoops, so I'm just going to go to Drum Factory Direct, get new hoops from them, for toms, and I'd probably do it on the snare as well. But here's just a quick sample. Take that muffler off. Get the snares a little bit of a tighten here. This muffler up So it's just touching the head. All right, 13-inch. Floor tom, 16 by 60. They're close, but they're not where I want them. Like I said, hoops out around. Bass drum. There's no internal muffling. That's just the Power Stroke 3 batter. Mufflers touching the head on the toms. I'm just gonna bring it up. Where the heck is it? Ooh, kills it. Not as bad on the floor tom. 13, you bring the muffler up, absolutely just kills it. Bad. Don't like the snare, really. Just because the strainer's just. If I was going to keep the snare and really use it, I would put a butt plate and a modern strainer on it. It doesn't sound bad, it's just. Bass drum, the floor tom right now, pretty solid. But like I said, the tom hoops they're out of round, so they're just not going into tune very well. But But got them pretty close, just to get a little demo out there. I got a star logo coming for the front bass drum head. I'll have that on tomorrow. Other than that, they're pretty cool. Pretty cool. I'll be happy once I get the new hoops put on them. Other than that, hope you enjoyed this little adventure.